Hi guys, welcome to the Python with Python and Data Science with Pablo Data Science channel. Here we talk everything data science. The roadmap is pretty simple: introduction to Python, introduction to statistics with Python, and data analysis with Python. Now, the interesting thing about this channel is at this point, it has three playlists, and all three playlists are interconnected one way or the other. The first playlist has to do with Python, the second playlist, statistics, the third playlist with data analysis with Python. And in our statistics playlist, we are looking at variables from a data set on extramarital affairs. So it's only now ideal for us to analyze the data set here and then do the statistics side of things on the statistics playlist. So what am I going to do? So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to look at how we source the data, because remember, data sourcing is a thing. So data was sourced from, and I'm going to share the link so you can see that there are a lot of data sets there. So look at where we sourced the data, and here is the link to where we sourced the data. It's over here. I'll drop it in the description. And again, I'm going to just put it out here so we can see it. So you can see that we're looking at the affairs. Look at that, affairs, extramarital affairs data. And you can see here that there's some interesting things to the data. It has observation 601, it has 9 columns, and it has binary columns, and it has numerical columns, so you can see. And so by clicking on this, I'm going to have the data set. I already have the data set here, so which is the affairs data set, and there's also the affairs data description. So we're all going to look at that. So again, back to this place. So I already have that. And so the next thing I'm going to do is I have already, at the beginning of this, excuse me, at the beginning of this, we already have our libraries. But what I'm going to do is, just to make it a little extensive, I'll go over to the statistics with Python notebook, and I'll take this. So I mean, there's a playlist for this, so you can check it out. And then I come over here and then I paste that. So this is what we'll be working with here. Now the next thing we're going to do is we're going to read our data set into a data frame, and to do that we're going to give it a name, call that data underscore affairs. I'm trying my best to ensure that we maintain the same thing here. So so we have data underscore affairs, and inside I use pd.read CSV. Again, it's the pandas method that lets us read a raw data file into a data frame, and the data frame is rectangular data, 2-dimensional, and rows and columns. So here I pick up my affairs data set, right? And so here again, we'll read into a data frame. So we've done that. Now, again, remember, it is important that once you read your data frame, it's important to look at several things. You try to do some exploratory data analysis moves. So what we're going to do is I'm going to look at data affairs, and we're going to look at the shape. All right, you can see we'll look at the shape here. So what does the shape tell us? You can see rows and columns. So interesting thing is, at the source where we got the data, we have 9 columns and 601 observations. At the point of bringing it in here, we have 10 columns. So that's interesting. So let's understand why that is. Then again, we go over to looking at data affairs dot head, which lets us see the first 5 rows so that we can eyeball it and try to understand what we're dealing with. So you can see we have our data. Yes, see the reason why we have an additional one. We have unnamed, and it's interesting what this means. I wonder what this means. Right, but I can see this is the 9 remaining columns, the ones that we saw initially. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Interesting, right? So we already have one here. So it's cool to understand why we have this guy and what this means. And again, in data analysis, you don't just quick to drop a column, right? So it's important we understand what that means. Again, documentation is right. So here we have the first 5 rows, right? The first 5 rows. Next thing we want to do is we want to look at a concise data summary of what we have, and to do that we take our dataaffairs.info to give us a general sense of what we have going on here. So here is a concise summary. Again, now in this concise summary we get to see that this column is an integer, and of course, look at that. Now, another interesting thing we would like to see is the data description for this. And if I come over here, you can see I have the data description here, and it opens up. And so you can see its description basically says infidelity data known as affairs, right? It's a cross-section data from a survey conducted by Psychology Today in 1969. Whoa, that's a lot. So that's a long time ago. So you can see we have all this. We have our data here, how often engaged in extramarital sexual intercourse. So you can see the data, right? So what I'm trying to look at is that first row. Oh, I cannot see anything in the first row, basically. Right, so maybe I move over here, and then I go to the document here. So let me see what this document says. Oh, cool. So you can see we're trying to find out why we have that last row. Oh, now you see there's an online source to this data set. So you can see, again, we don't know why we have that, and it's important we find out. So the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go over here and find out. We have the pages for it, so we could just scroll through and try to make sense of what exactly is our data, and to find out, because we have to know why we have that data. I cannot find that. I cannot see that. Oh, I think we found it. Look at that. Number of affairs. Oh, look at the data here. And so let me click on this and see what that shows us. Oh, so you see now we have the data here. Look at that. It's ID. So the first 5 rows, says 4, 5, 11, 16, 23. Now let's go back to our data analysis here. So this is this. So here I'm going to look at unnamed, so which is data affairs. Yes, unnamed 0. And then I want to see, let's say, the first 10. So we're going to look at the first 10. Let's increase this. So we could put it here. Or first 5, right? Let's look at 10. So we have 4, 5, 11, 16, 23. And if I go over here, 4, 5, 11, 16, 23. So it's actually IDs. Interesting. So that means we are talking about IDs. So it gave it a different name, right? So it has IDs here. So you can see the initial data was how it was named before it was renamed, right? So it's interesting. So this are IDs. So I think what we're going to do is we are going to look at this data set and we're going to rename this data set. So that's going to be one of the last things we're going to do. We're going to rename this data set and call it ID. So we know that we have an ID column. So how do we rename columns? Always interesting for us to go over here and say how to rename a pandas column, right? And so we're going to get something interesting, how to rename a pandas column. You can see we have, so to rename a pandas column, oh, there's documentation. So we go straight off to documentation. So we're going to have this. So we could just go straight up and you can see rename. Oh, you see how cool we can do that? So what I'm going to do is I could simply copy this. You see what I want to rename. I copy this and I go over here. Really interesting how we can do this. So now I'm going to make changes to this and call this data affairs. I want to rename a column and see that what the column I want to rename is this. So I come over here and this should be it. So if we go back to the documentation, you can see that this was the first name, right? So now they're trying to rename it to this, right? So so that's why it's not going to be the capital A, it's going to be the small a. So which means if I come here, I put a name here, and then I'm going to rename it to, I'm going to give it ID. ID, that's what we're going to name it. We don't need the rest of this, guys, so we take them out, right? So does that work? So again, I also want to set this up in pipelines. So I'm going to call this data affairs _1. So we know that we have different pipelines for it. So here what we're doing is renaming the unnamed, renaming the unnamed column, right? Does that work? Let's check it out. Now the next thing we're going to do is we're going to look at data affairs 1, and we're going to look at the head, right? And we see it's now ID. Really cool stuff, right? And now if we look at the data affairs 1.info, you know that we're going to start out from there in the next analysis of the data we're going to be working with. And in fact, to make it really cool, every update we do here, you're going to see it in, you're going to see that data set inside. We're going to use that data anytime we're now working with our statistics with Python playlist. So when we go there, everything we do here will be there. So we'll just basically talk about statistics over there, while here we clean our data set, we work with a data set. Any data set we're going to be working with in statistics, we do the cleaning over here. So yeah, so basically that's that. Take your time out, watch this. We have sourced a data set, we have converted the data set into a data frame, and we've read it into a data frame, and we noticed something was weird here, and then we renamed that data, that column, and now we have this. So the next thing is we're going to be looking at it one step after another until we make sense of this data frame. Again, like, subscribe, and share with friends, families, and enemies so that they can learn Python one object, or they can learn data science one step at a time.